Okay, so we are sort of back. If you noticed any disruption in the space-time continuum or this broadcast, it's because my internet went out and I'm kind of pissy about it right now, which only just feeds into my pissiness about how the Big 12 handled expansion. So the athletic directors, presidents, university presidents got together. They unanimously decided to not expand. And I'm so pissed about one, the way we handled it, two, the outcome. And I'm not saying that expansion is like the thing we have to do, but it just really ticks me off that we have basically thrown our hands up and said, well, to the rest of the world, we've thrown our hands up and said, nah, we changed our mind. We're good. But really, I think we all know that we're playing a game of chicken with the TV networks just to get more money out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it just really pisses me off about the way we did it. And I know you guys were probably talking a little bit while my internet was being stupid. So why don't you go ahead and start talking before I go jump off a cliff right now?
So we just kind of discuss why they would do this, and so I really didn't understand why they would do it. So Garrett kind of explained, which I think we were recording it. It might be on the tail end of the last show, but I think Garrett, you should probably explain more.
Yeah.
Why um we don't want to expand possibly, and how it relates to kind of the money aspect, right? So kind of talk about that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we were to expand, and the reason why networks like ESPN and Fox don't want us to do this is because I know that at least within ESPN's agreement that if we were to expand, ESPN would have to pay us so many more $1 million for each school that we add. That's written into the contract. And now, again, as Big 12 people, we can be like, well, sorry, ESPN, maybe you shouldn't have said that in the contract if you didn't want that to happen, type of thing. But you can understand why ESPN and Fox want to put the kibosh on expansion there. The reason why we might not want to expand is, yeah, obviously we're not adding any Power Five schools here. I mean, BYU is probably the only one you could probably lump into that category since they're an independent. They're traditionally successful. I think they have like the longest active bowl streak in NCAA right now, something like that. Largely, people view them as a decent football team, right? Then you add Houston, yeah, they're good, okay, and then you go from there, and it kind of falls off a cliff, right, with weaker teams, and so yeah, I think people say that you'd be watering down the product, but the only problem with that is that the Big 12 is already largely seen as an inferior conference to the others, at least if you're paying attention to ESPN, because that's just ESPN's thing. Whether or not that's true, whatever, but that's the perception, right? And so this is just my opinion, but look, if we're going to be perceived as weak anyway, why not expand? Why not create divisions like every other conference has and give our teams a better shot at going undefeated or winning a conference championship if we bring a championship game back when you create new divisions and stuff like that, and be more like the other teams, because we all know that the round robin is tough. We all know the respect it should deserve, but it doesn't get that. And so the only way to get better is to play like everyone else. And who cares? They're going to say our conference is weak anyway, like they do already. And then we can just kind of force their hand by potentially having some undefeated teams if we have divisions.
So yeah, and this is where I was like trying to figure it out in my head. Again, this might have recorded before, so I'm just going to kind of go over that again. So basically, playing every single Big 12 team every single year, like that, once upon a time, you didn't play Texas every year. I mean, we did, but
Yeah.
or you didn't play Nebraska every year, or you didn't play Missouri every year, or you didn't play the trap, Iowa State team every year. You had a weaker, schedule one year and possibly a stronger schedule, and everybody got together to make sure it was not screwing any one team every year. And that's exactly how the SEC is. Alabama does not have a grueling schedule. They have perceived SEC big time games, LSU and, all these other, there's some seriously good teams in the SEC, but they don't play each other every single year. Like, that's what people don't realize. You know what I mean? Now, of course, they all play each other in some way, because they're all, cross pollinated, and they're all, scheduling each other in every other year in some way. Alabama played this team and this team beat this team and all that other stuff. But in reality, they don't have a solid, I mean, they can be in the SEC and then schedule these powder puff teams like they do, and they very much do. Not that the Big 12 doesn't, but they can schedule these powder puff teams later in the year because they know they're going to be having, they're going to have to go to the SEC championship or whatever, the Big 10 championship or whatever, and that's an acceptable practice and doesn't hurt them in the polls whatsoever.
Yep.
While we're battling out with Big 12 teams. So, to me, it's harder to get to, and the other thing we talked about, Chris, was, OU made the, playoff last year. But if any other team besides OU or even Texas with the brand name, not necessarily the his recent history, were in that same position, would they have made it? Because they're not a blue blood team, right? And that really is the conversation you should be having is, okay, OU kind of, well, they made the playoff without all this other stuff, without a championship game somehow. But what about the DCUs, and what about the Baylors, and what about the Oklahoma States that are eventually going to have a good year, and they're going to be left out because they're not a blue blood team? To me, that is a vote for expansion, because even if you add lesser teams, you're still in the same conversation because it's apples to apples, and you're not the different one. And they don't have any way to say anything different. Maybe they can say you're weaker, but, SEC has Vanderbilt. Shut up. I mean, don't tell me, about Kansas and Iowa State. You know what I mean? You play Baylor. You play West Virginia. You play Texas, OU, Oklahoma State every week. And then shut your mouth. You know what I mean?
So is OU making the playoff last year the thing that killed expansion this year? Like, if they wouldn't have made it, would it have put more pressure on expansion this year?
Absolutely. Yeah. It would have put more pressure on OU. I think the boring thing and the OU thing, I don't even know what the thing is because they're not saying anything. But I would assume, what's funny is the first person to walk out of that room early was Texas. But Texas has a Longhorn network. So, of course, they don't want to expand and screw up their Longhorn network. So they're out. They don't want to mess up the Longhorn network. They're getting way too much money from ESPN, from the Longhorn network. And if they expand, that's somehow in jeopardy, I assume, because I don't know how that works, because I don't know how they freaking got their own network anyway, but that's beside the point. It seems so ridiculous. Just the whole thing, I just don't understand. Like, why talk about it and then act like it's some 30-minute session where everybody's like, okay, jerks, raise your hands, and if you don't raise your hands how I think you should, lesser guys, then we're going to get you, or I don't know what's going on right now. Nobody's saying anything, and it seems ridiculous.
So I wonder if expansion and the Longhorn network can be separated. Like, if we expand, how does that affect the Longhorn network? Does it affect it? Because honestly, I would be fine if we expanded and Texas can keep their freaking stupid network. Like,
why
fine,
would we
whatever?
care about
Nobody
it?
watches it anyway.
I don't care. Nobody watches anyway. Why would one team have their own network?
Your ratings are terrible, and you're just bullying the rest of the league, basically, especially the other Texas teams. Fine, keep it. Like, give us 2 or 4 more teams, and then we can be parity, whatever, on the national level. Garrett, I love what you said about how, like, if we're gonna be perceived as inferior, let's go be the best inferior league we can be. Like, okay, so we don't add some other Power 5 teams. Really, I saw this as kind of a no-win situation, and the only way we could have won it is if we had poached current Power 5 teams, which never would have happened. But it was fun to talk about. Nebraska coming back and joining the family, and poaching whoever else. I don't even care. But what really pissed me off, like, let's go be that best Mid-America Conference, or let's go be that best ACC. And once we have a championship game, then maybe we start. Then our perception goes up.
Mm-hmm.
But it really pissed me off that this whole thing is really all about money, and which seems super short-sighted.
Yep.
But the thing that really got me, and I kind of went off on a comment on Pistol's blog about saying, the Big 12, no wonder we're disrespected. No wonder we're treated as second class or disadvantaged or whatever. It's because we act that way. We go and we string these 11 or to 19 teams along, and then we call them an hour to 15 minutes before we make a decision. Decisions should have been made weeks ago. And so that BYU and Houston and Cincy and whoever else can prepare.
Well, yeah, so they don't look like idiots, print out the Big 12 backdrops and all that crap, and what about their respective conferences? Are they like, dude?
Cincy doesn't want to be a part of this now.
Oh, I see how y'all are. So they when they walk into that meeting next week, everybody's gonna go, all right, I see how you are. I see how you are.
So we not only did we prove ourselves as jokes, but we pissed off 11 other schools, which then pissed off their conferences at them.
Mm-hmm.
We have.
Yeah.
Well,
I will.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my daddy always said, never quit your job unless you have another one lined up. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on the short-sighted statement. Look, if we were to expand, maybe that means less money for Texas and OU, whatever. I don't care about that. But maybe it means a few more conference championships for Texas and OU, which means more money. Or maybe it means more conference championships for someone like Oklahoma State, not Baylor because they're going back to the basement, or TCU or West Virginia. But you see what I'm saying? The only people who can win in the current structure of the Big 12 is Texas and OU. And that's if they go undefeated. And then maybe, just maybe, if there's enough chaos, they can have one loss to do that. But if you're anyone else, forget about it.
So expansion makes it easier for a lesser team, whatever you want to call it, mid-level team,
not blue blood,
to make a playoff. So my question is what happens if TCU or West Virginia next, when we expand, if we ever expand, they squeeze into that Big 12 championship, kind of like K-State did a few 100 years ago and beat OU, and they win it. Do they get an automatic bid? No, because there's 5 and there's 4 slots. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You still don't get an automatic bid, and you're still a second-rate team in everybody's eyes. That's ESPN because you're not SEC. You know what I mean? So who didn't make it last year? So what conference didn't make it last year because the Big 12 is in? That had a championship game. Pac-12?
I think it was a Pac, yeah.
Yeah, I think Stanford was left out.
But they had lost twice, I think, right? So, I mean, and OU lost once to Texas?
I guess the point I'm making is that a TCU, instead of having to go, let's just say for whatever reason they're in different divisions than OU and Texas, instead of having to play them both, they would just have to play one of those, assuming OU and Texas wins the opposite division. They would just have to play them in the conference championship, thus making the probability of them going undefeated or having one loss or whatever it may be a lot more likely. Because right now, when you're playing everyone, literally everyone, just the odds of losing in the Big 12 are like 99.9% for most people. So
I saw something on Twitter. Schools who got screwed by Big 12's decisions today ranked number 1, every Big 12 school but UT and OU.
Yeah.
Number 2, Houston, 3 Cincy, 4 BYU. And I thought that was hilarious. I can 100% agree. The only schools that come out of this unscathed are really UT and OU.
Yeah, it's it's status quo. The only people who benefit from them are them because they're the only ones who can go to a national championship.
And here's the thing about it. I think that as much as Boren, who had to be up there because he spouted his mouth off, and this is like his penance for doing that. Like Bowlesby's trotting him out there to make it look like there's a unified conference, whatever I see through your bullcrap. I would not be surprised if OU was the first one to bolt.
Oh yeah.
Bolt early. I also wouldn't be surprised if UT tried to form its own conference like we talked about last week or last time. Like UT has no loyalty to the Big 12. I think OU does to some extent, but they're probably tired of being bullied around by UT.
Mm-hmm. I think OU does if it means OU is the new world order of the Big 12. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I think what we're going to see now, I guess to go back to the short-sighted point, is that the Big 12 is going to continue to slowly wither into obscurity, barring some explosive, incredible team, here or there. Maybe that will happen. I mean, we have 9 years until the contracts end. So that could happen. I'm not saying that the Big 12 won't go back to the college football playoff. I'm just saying it's going to be less likely. I think if we would have expanded and gone to divisions, we probably would have seen maybe every other year a Big 12 team go in and play for a CFP. But now it's probably going to be maybe 3 years, maybe 4, who knows, at best. But it's going to continue withering into obscurity, and it's going to water down the product even more, and it's just going to get weaker. And then whenever super conferences come, we're going to have less favorable positioning than we would have had if we would have won all those other championships or played in all those other CFPs or whatever, right? So in the long term, I think this just hurts us because we're just going to be in a worse position 9 years from now, in my opinion.
And we could just point and laugh at Bowlesby saying this is your fault.
Mm-hmm.
So randomly, I hit the 2010 Week 8 NCAA football scoreboard for the Big 12. Let me go through some scores. This is kind of fun because we had, 12 teams, the Big 12. This week in history, this would be 2010. Number 1 OU falls to number 11 Missouri, 36-27. Number 14 falls to number 16 Nebraska. Brandon Whedon led OSU 51-41. Iowa State beat 19 Texas 28-21. Baylor, Robert Griffin III, beats 22 Kansas State 47-42. Texas Tech over Colorado 27-24, and Texas A&M beat Kansas. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranked Big 12 teams. And number 1 was OU. So it just goes to show you, one, same scores that we had today. I mean, it's the same scores we're having this week. It's just, for some reason, we had this perception of being elite. So the question is how do you get back with it? Yes, don't let Missouri and Nebraska and good teams leave. That'd be a really good one. But how do we get back there? That's my question to you guys. How do we get back there, or can we ever, without poaching a big team?
I think, again, barring some sort of exceptional year, just some sort of Cinderella year for an OSU or even an OU. I mean, OU is perfectly capable of doing that. I think Texas is too far out for that to happen. Maybe they do here in 4 years or something like that. But barring some miraculous year, which I think is fairly unlikely for any Big 12 team, no matter how good they are, I just think, again, we continue to diminish until we get into a super conference and slowly build up our reputation there. I just don't see it happening at this point.
I think the only way we get back to relevance is if OU has a great 1 year span, and that helps us. And all the other teams, including TU, I think, maybe not after the media hype around the Notre Dame game, either OU or UT have an incredible year 1 year, or someone like West Virginia or Oklahoma State or K-State or somebody strings together a minimum of 2 incredible years
Mm-hmm.
consecutively.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way. And for those 3 or 4 teams that are kind of in the middle, they would almost have to go undefeated both years
Mm-hmm.
for it to be like an incredible year.
Yeah.
I think we would have to see a good bowl performance year too. Big 12 doesn't really do well in bowl season, but if you have, say, Baylor goes and wins whatever bowl they do after having a good year this year, say West Virginia does the same, say OU does the same, say OSU does the same, say Texas figures it out somewhere down the line, say K-State takes care of business, then it's going to be a little harder to ignore that perception. But
yeah, that is an excellent point, and that is something that the Big 12 has been consistently bad at. Mm-hmm. Is taking care of postseason opponents for whatever reason. And we get talked about.
They're so tired at the end of it. They're so worn out, from the round robin schedule, it's just such a catch-22, right?
Yeah. So we did throw out a poll on our Twitter at B12 Podcast. And surprisingly, we got a surprising number of votes. I was impressed.
Well, okay. Well, can you pop that up? Can you share the screen?
Let's see if I can.
So, what was the end votes?
129.
Nice. Nice.
Was there a super majority? Was there a?
Yeah. Yes. So
there totally was a super majority because Big 12 fans can do that. It's just the Big 12 that can't.
Super majority. That's amazing. When you first came out with that, there's no super majority. That's so dumb.
All right, here we go. Yes. Can you guys see that?
Oh, yeah. That's a super majority, all right.
All right. So the question was not if or will, but how. How will the Big 12 screw up Big 12 expansion? And the options were no expansion. They only admit 1 new team, throwing chaos into an 11 team, you have to be even.
Yeah.
Admitting the wrong teams, and that could be up for debate, or change the name to SEC 2.
Personal favorite right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Twitter only gives you 4 choices. I probably should have changed one of those to admitting all 11 teams because that would have been awesome.
Hey, first super conference though. That's innovation right there.
That's true. That's true. So out of the 129 final votes, 81% of you guys thought no expansion. I am very proud of the 9 or so of you that voted for only admitting 1 team or changing the name to SEC 2.
So I think another viable option would have been IDK Texas.
Yeah, I'm just impressed with 129 votes. I'll be honest.
That's true, considering we have 7 followers.
And there was 60 in 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Of our 7 followers, we are 3 of them.
Hey, that's 4 people.
Hey, so I think what we're saying is if you're listening to this, follow us at B12 Podcast on Twitter.
There you go. All right. I am hopefully not screwing anything up. Okay, I don't think I did. All right. I think that just about wraps up this show. I think even with the outage, we're right around an hour. Thank you, guys. I do want to close out with one final question, but let's kind of wrap this thing up. Thank you for watching. Check out our website, b12podcast.com, Twitter at B12Podcast. At EJ Hayes, at GW Sauls. I am at CJ Armstrong. Check us out on Twitter. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. The last question that I want to throw out to you guys. I think we all agreed earlier in the show, Charlie's gone. Okay. Chances that Les becomes the coach at Texas.
Les.
Come on.
So Texas has shown as of late that they are way too trendy to be thinking that they're going to be the next SEC. That's not the trendy thing. Although that may be the next trendy thing is instead of going all offense on people's A's, like they'll like the idea would be maybe the Tom Herman situation or Art Briles or, offensive minded guys, right? Which I think they thought they did with him, although he's a defense guy, but he had a salty offense at Louisville. What Strong did, but maybe where I'm going with this is maybe is the answer to your question. And Texas tries to change the Big 12 into the SEC by hiring SEC hard-nosed, football type minds. Although he really didn't play that game in the SEC. He's weird. He played big offense without a quarterback. I never understood Les Miles at LSU, although he did win a natty.
You know what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it happens.
Yes.
Because I think of how wacky Texas's boosters are, and I think of how wacky Les Miles is, and I think of just how wacky everything is. And I'm like, this is it, man. This is match made in heaven. And most importantly, Les knows how to beat OU. So
that's true.
There you go.
That is true.
I think if Texas is really and truly trying to create the first super conference and they're going to be built around Texas, who better to lead them in that charge than Les Miles?
No, wait. Does Texas have real grass or do they have fake grass?
I think they have real grass.
Okay, it's match made in heaven.
Good for his diet.
He can eat the grass.
No artificial preservatives.
Yeah. He's going to come to O State and be like, I have no bearing on this game because I can't eat grass.
I mean, the only other better guy I could think of is maybe Holgorsen.
Oh.
Well, Holgorsen he's kind of been on the hot seat at West Virginia. Obviously he's doing well this year, but before this year, people were kind of saying, well, we might can him, and
right.
I don't know. I just think.
So what about Herman? Tom Herman. I mean,
I think he's one of those guys where maybe. I mean, look, that worked out for Texas A&M getting someone, right? That worked out for them pretty well. So I'm not saying Texas doesn't do that, but I think Texas would probably balk at following any sort of pattern that A&M did. So that's why I lean more towards Les Miles.
Yeah, but they went after. Who was it? The Baylor guy that was at Tulsa, the offensive coordinator. I mean, they've had some life at least this year. I mean, they were bad last year. They've had some life this year. Not, they're 3-3. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I think if you're looking to charge the conference, look, other guy, Herman Miller. I don't know his name.
Cheers.
But,
I think you're thinking Bob Knight.
Yeah. That name doesn't get me excited, but Les Miles, everyone knows that name. All right, everyone knows that. And
honestly, I'll be honest. Like, I think it's not a horrible hire, but playing Les Miles at Texas would concern me way more than just about anybody else. And that's weird because the dude's just consistent. He brought. Honestly, I thought he brought OSU out of the basement.
Yeah, he totally did.
And the guy can coach. The guy can motivate. He's a nice guy, and he can recruit like heck. I mean, he's always got. Can you imagine what he could do at Texas? Look what he did at LSU. He couldn't get a quarterback, but neither can Texas, so it's a good fit. But man, the guy can recruit, dude.
I honestly thought I would have to convince both of you that. Oh, no. It was a smart move for Texas to hire.
I think last week it would have been a convincing, but this week I think I kind of like it. It's weird.
That would illustrate the good of the Big 12. I think we've seen the bad in conference expansion, but that's the bad wacky of the Big 12. But the good wacky of the Big 12 would be bringing a guy like Les in to just be utter chaos, right? So,
I mean, can you imagine having Big Game Bob, Coach Bro, Mullet?
Dude, it's like the
caricature. And the Mad Hatter.
I know. It's like
and Holgorsen.
Yeah,
I know.
And the Wizard, if he's
and the Wizard.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I'm kind of excited about that. Not like losing to Texas again, but
sure.
Yeah, just the conversation's awesome.
Right. Yeah, I totally thought I'd have to convince you guys, but I'm glad you guys are on board with me.
I think I'm on board. It's weird.
Yes, fist bump. All right. That wraps it up for this week. Big 12 podcast. Again, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for listening. EJ, Garrett, thank you guys for joining. As always, it's always awesome to have you guys. This has been the B12 podcast, where every show matters. I would personally like to apologize to every person in Provo and in Houston and Cincinnati who got their hopes up, because I think we handled it very, very poorly. So my apologies, whatever that means, to you guys. I am sorry. I think we're idiots, and we are. So anyway, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go follow us on Facebook at B12 Podcast. Again, at EJ Hayes, at GW Sauls. I am at CJ Armstrong. Let's talk on Twitter, and we will see you guys next time.
Peace.